June 22, 1964, 11:15 p.m. The Palmetto Building, 22 West 135th Street. Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. stands in the center of the smoky office, his white suit pristine, his hands trembling slightly. Office, his white suit pristine, his hands trembling slightly. Across the desk sits Bumpy Johnson, sharpening a pencil with a small silver knife. Outside, 3 carloads of Genovese hitmen are idling their engines, waiting for the signal to burn this building to the ground with everyone inside. They have 12 Molotov cocktails and 4 Thompson submachine guns. They are here to erase the political voice of Harlem. The air in the room is heavy, smelling of stale tobacco and impending violence. Powell wipes sweat from his brow. They said they'll kill everyone, Bumpy. My staff. The secretaries. Me. Bumpy stops sharpening. He blows the wood shavings off the desk. He looks at the clock, then at the terrified minister. Let them strike a match, Bumpy says softly. It'll be the last light they ever see. This wasn't just a gang war. This was the night the underworld became the guardian of the civil rights movement. And the clock was ticking down to midnight. 2 weeks earlier, the streets of Harlem were already boiling. Bumpy Johnson had returned from Alcatraz only a year prior in 1963. The Harlem he found was different from the one he left. The old rackets were fading, replaced by the righteous anger of the civil rights movement. But Bumpy remained the undisputed king. He wasn't just a gangster, he was a gatekeeper. He settled disputes the police ignored. He paid rent for families facing eviction. He was a complex paradox, a man who sold poison to the community but would kill anyone else who tried to poison it. He sat in his office like a monarch in exile, watching the world change through heavy drapes. The summer of 1964 was dangerous. The Civil Rights Act was being debated in Washington, and white supremacist groups were coordinating with rogue elements of the Italian mob to destabilize black leadership. They wanted chaos. They wanted to prove that black political power led to anarchy. Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the charismatic congressman and pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church, was their primary target. He was loud, he was proud, and he was effective. The stakes were national. If Powell fell, the voice of Harlem and Washington would be silenced. The Italian syndicate, specifically a rogue faction of the Genovese family, saw an opportunity. They wanted the gambling rackets back under their total control, and they viewed Powell's push for black economic independence as a direct threat to their bottom line. They decided to send the message that no pulpit was high enough to save him. The threat came from a capo named Vincent the Butcher Gigante. Gigante was an erratic, violent force within the Genovese crime family. Known for his mental instability and extreme brutality, he didn't respect the old treaties between the Italians and the black heavyweights of Harlem. He viewed Harlem simply as a cash register that was short on receipts. In 1957, he had famously tried to assassinate Frank Costello, the prime minister of the mob. He failed, but the attempt proved his audacity. He walked around Greenwich Village in a bathrobe, mumbling to himself, but his orders were lucid and lethal. Gigante wanted total submission. He demanded a 60% cut of all policy banks in Harlem, a rate that would bankrupt the local operators. When Powell spoke out against Italian mob influence in his weekly sermon, calling them leeches on the vein of Harlem, Gigante took it personally. He didn't want a negotiation. He wanted a public execution. The resources at his disposal were terrifying. Gigante commanded a crew of 30 hard-nosed soldiers from East Harlem in the Bronx. They had access to police protection, military-grade weaponry, and a complete lack of moral compass. On the morning of June 22nd, a brick shattered the window of Powell's political office. Wrapped around it was a note, "Tonight the preacher burns. Midnight." It wasn't a warning. It was a schedule. Gigante's plan was simple, loud, and designed to terrorize. He would use a torch squad. 3 cars would pull up to the Palmetto Building where Powell was working late on legislation. They would firebox the X's with Molotov cocktails, forcing the occupants out onto 135th Street. There, gunmen waiting in a parked delivery truck would cut them down. It was a military ambush designed to look like a riot gone wrong. They believed Bumpy was too old, too fresh out of Alcatraz to intervene. They thought the Lion of Harlem had lost his teeth. 11:30 p.m., the Palmetto Building. The office is dark, save for the streetlights filtering through the blinds. Bumpy stands by the window, peering through a crack in the fabric. The sensory details are sharp, heightened by adrenaline. The smell of old paper and lemon furniture polish battles with the acrid scent of nervous sweat radiating from Powell's two aides. The street below is unnervingly quiet. No traffic, no pedestrians. The silence of a graveyard before the funeral. 11:42 p.m. A black Cadillac rolls slowly down 135th Street. It slows down in front of the building, then speeds up. A scout. Bumpy doesn't move. He strikes a match to light a cigarette. The flare illuminates his scarred face for a brief second. Scritch. Whoosh. "They're checking the perimeter," Bumpy whispers. His voice is calm, almost bored. 11:50 p.m. The sound of heavy engines rumbles in the distance. Not one car. 3. The sound grows louder, vibrating the glass in the window frames. The aides dive under the desks. Powell clutches a Bible, his knuckles white. Bumpy unbuttons his suit jacket. He adjusts his tie. 11:55 p.m. The cars appear, 2 dark sedans and a panel truck. They screech to a halt directly in front of the entrance. 12 men spill out. They are wearing long coats. You can hear the clinking of glass bottles. The metallic chat-chack of slides racking on automatic weapons echoes off the brick buildings. 11:58 p.m. One of Gigante's men, a distinctively large thug named Sal, steps forward with a lighter. He holds a rag-stuffed bottle. He looks up at the second-floor window. He grins. He raises the lighter. "Burn it out!" Sal screams. The flame catches the rag. The arm draws back. The throw begins. Then, click. The sound is impossibly loud. It isn't a gun. It is the sound of a spotlight engaging. A massive floodlight from the roof of the building across the street slams on, bathing the street in blinding white brilliance. The mobsters freeze, shielding their eyes. The street held its breath. What Gigante didn't know was that Bumpy Johnson owned the rooftops. Bumpy hadn't spent the last 6 hours sharpening pencils. He had mobilized the 40 thieves, his elite guard of young, fearless enforcers. While Powell was panicking, Bumpy had placed 3 snipers on the roof of the Palmetto building and 6 more on the adjacent tenements. He had turned 135th Street into a kill zone, and the Italians were standing in the center of the target. Bumpy had called in favors from the old days. He had contacted the local precinct captain, a man whose mortgage he had paid off in 1948, and told him to keep the patrol cars away for exactly 1 hour. Execution. As the spotlight blinds the attackers, the doors of the Palmetto building fly open, but Powell doesn't come out. Bumpy walks out, alone. He steps onto the sidewalk, his hands empty. He walks straight towards Sal, the man with the Molotov cocktail. Sal is paralyzed by confusion. The spotlight is hot on his neck. From the shadows of the alleyways, 50 men step forward. They don't yell. They don't run. They simply emerge from the darkness like ghosts. They are holding shotguns, baseball bats, and Lugers. They form a solid wall of human iron around the Italian crew. Bumpy stops 3 feet from Sal. The Molotov cocktail is still burning in Sal's hand, the flame sputtering. Bumpy reaches into his pocket. The mobsters flinch, fingers tightening on triggers. Bumpy pulls out a cigar. He leans forward, putting the tip of the cigar into the flame of the Molotov cocktail held by the shaking hitman. He puffs. The tip glows orange. "You got a light," Bumpy says, smoke curling from his lips, "but you ain't got the heat." He looks Sal in the eye. "Drop it, or every man here dies before the glass hits the ground." 12:01 a.m. Sal looks at the rooftop. He sees the glint of a rifle barrel. He looks at the 50 men surrounding his crew. He looks at Bumpy, whose eyes are colder than the Alcatraz Bay. Sal slowly lowers his arm. He blows out the flame on the rag. The smoke wisps up between them, smelling of gasoline and defeat. "Go home," Bumpy commands. "Tell Vincent that Harlem is closed for business tonight." The retreat is humiliating. The mobsters lower their weapons. They back into their cars, eyes darting nervously at the silent army watching them. The engines roar to life, sounding less like predators now and more like fleeing prey. They peel away, tires screeching, disappearing toward the safer streets of Italian East Harlem. Up in the office, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. watches from the window. He sinks into his chair, exhaling a breath he felt he'd been holding for a lifetime. The ripple effects were immediate. The next morning, a sit-down was called in neutral territory at the Genovese Social Club in Greenwich Village. The higher-ups in the mafia, furious at Gigante's reckless exposure, ordered to stand down. They couldn't afford a war with Bumpy Johnson, not with the feds watching every move. Bumpy didn't gain territory that night, he gained immortality. He proved that even after a decade in prison, his word was the only law that mattered on 135th Street. He had protected the political future of Black America with a bluff, a spotlight, and a cigar. This confrontation is more than a gangster story. It is a pivotal moment in the intersection of crime and civil rights. It showed that in the turbulence of the 1960s, the lines between sinner and saint were often blurred. Bumpy Johnson, a convicted felon, provided the security that the NYPD refused to offer a sitting congressman. It reveals Bumpy's true nature. He was a criminal, yes, but he was a criminal with a fierce, almost medieval sense of duty to his tribe. He understood that if the outside world burned down the institutions of Harlem, he would be king of the ashes. He fought for Powell not out of piety, but out of pride. The lesson is timeless. Power abhors a vacuum. When the law fails to protect the people will turn to whoever has the strength to stand in the door. Bumpy Johnson didn't need a badge to keep the peace. He needed leverage. If this story showed you the real power of the Harlem Godfather, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you respect the man who made the mob back down. Comment below, was Bumpy a hero or a villain in this moment? Next week, we uncover the secret tapes that prove Bumpy Johnson knew about the Malcolm X assassination before it happened.